I'm now at the Civitavecchia cruise terminal, and in port on this breezy afternoon is the Silver Moon, as well as the Explorer of the Seas, which is the boat that I'm going to be taking to Florida. And I'm now inside of the Civitavecchia cruise terminal, and you have a pretty good view of the ocean front from here. And the way this is supposed to work is everyone has a set time when they're supposed to arrive at the terminal to pass through the security. And thankfully the time slot that I was given is really kind of rather late in the afternoon, and there's not really many people here. It's either that or the cruise ship is just not going to be that crowded, which probably is not the case. And hello again, everyone. I am finally aboard the Explorer of the Seas, and we did get a little bit of a late start from Civitavecchia Rome. Instead of leaving at the planned 5 p.m., we left closer to 6:30, and it was rather dark out when we left, so there really wasn't too much to film. There was a little bit of a pool party going on here last night. There was maybe 10 people that were dancing on the stage by the pools there. Not a whole lot going on. And then now they have a movie playing here. And anyhow, just some background information on the Explorer of the Seas. This ship was built in the year 2000, and at one time it was the largest cruise ship in the world, and it held that title up until the year 2002. The Explorer of the Seas can accommodate up to 2,300 guests and has a total crew of 1,200 people. So that's about a ratio of 1 crew member to every guest, which is a fairly good ratio. And the Explorer of the Seas has a total of 15 decks and is 1,020 feet long, so it is a fairly large ship. And though the ship itself is 23 years old, so far I have found that it is in fairly good condition. It is very well taken care of, so the age of the ship shouldn't be much of a factor in whether or how much you're going to enjoy your cruise and your trip on the Explorer of the Seas. And we are now on our second day of our cruise, our 13-day cruise to Miami, Florida. And on the way to Miami, we are going to stop once in Spain, and we are now just off the coast of Spain. And then after our stop in Spain, we will stop again in the Canary Islands, and it looks like it's going to be a very exciting cruise. And we're still off the coast of Spain, and one thing that I have found rather remarkable is how calm the water can be. Like right now, it's almost like we're out on a lake. And what's also rather remarkable is how fast that can change, and out here on the open ocean it can change very quickly. And these are the large buoys, or rather very large rubber cushions, which protect the cruise ships from rubbing up against this dock. And these giant cushions are held onto the dock by these rather huge chains, and the cushions themselves look to be at least 1 foot thick, and they are, it's almost like a steam roller made out of rubber that's attached to each side of this dock, and they would have to be pretty big to be able to support these large cruise ships. And we are now in port at the Gran Canary Island, and I have some extra time, so let's go on a quick tour of the Explorer of the Seas. I am beginning the tour on deck 12, which has the running track and 8 laps around this track, which pretty much circles the pool area down below. That would be deck 11 with the swimming pools, and there are 2 full-size swimming pools and then 4 spas just on this part of the deck below, and then there's a 3rd pool further towards the bow area. And then as far as the running track goes, for exercising purposes, I do prefer to use deck number 4. And it's not so much that they have a running track on 4, but it's more of a path that instead of just going around this one small area on deck 4, the path goes around the entire ship, and 1 lap around this ship is approximately a half mile. So 2 laps around deck 4 is about 1 mile. And then they have more lounge chairs back here still on deck number 12. And then down below, here's the 3rd swimming pool on deck number 11. And they also have more lounge chairs down there as well. And I'm just going to walk up to deck 13. And since I've been on this cruise, I have not really been on deck 13 a whole lot. There really hasn't been much going on. And I should also mention that just going up and down these flights of stairs is pretty good exercise. Don't really need to use the jogging track. And here is deck number 13, and they have a whole bunch of these lounge chairs set up out here, but there usually are very few people up here, and it's just kind of a empty space for this cruise. And we are now walking towards the front or the bow of the ship. And one thing that is nice about this part is you do have a pretty good view. And then they have these plexiglass partitions for safety purposes, but here you can see the very front and bow of the Explorer of the Seas. And then this side on deck 13 looks to be pretty empty as well. There's just a few people in these little pod things that they have set up, but this side is pretty open. And I'm now just going to walk back down to the jogging track, and then towards the stern of the ship they have a 4th pool, and I believe they have at least 1 restaurant and then a arcade area. So let's go and check that out as well. And I'm now back on deck 12 with the jogging track, and you also get a pretty good view of the Gran Canary Island from up here. And then there's also a 2nd cruise ship in port this afternoon, and that would be the Sky Princess for Princess Cruises. And both of these ships are pretty similar. Maybe the Explorer of the Seas is a little bit bigger, but they are pretty similar in size. And now walking towards the rear or stern of the ship, and then they have a restaurant here on deck 12. I believe it's Johnny Rockets, though I have not tried that particular restaurant, and I'm still trying to figure out my meal plan. I just have the basic meal plan, which permits me to go to the buffet, and then they have a dining hall as well, and it's a fairly large dining hall that they have. It's a 3-story dining hall, and I have not been to that just because the buffet has been more convenient. The way the dining hall works on cruise ships and this ship as well is everyone has a set time when they're supposed to show up for their dinner, and I just find that the buffet is just a lot more convenient. You just come and go when you want. Anyhow, they have some ping pong tables set up here towards the stern of the ship, and then extra lounge chairs, and it does not look like they will ever run out of lounge chairs on the Explorer of the Seas, because they just have quite the surplus of chairs. And we are now just about at the very back of the ship, and there's a pretty neat sailboat. That one is called the Star Clippers, and that looks to be a Spanish flagged sailboat. And then they have some Navy ships, those are also Spanish flagged as well. And then they have this rather large container port. And here is the stairway for the 4th swimming pool that they have on the Explorer of the Seas, and this takes us to deck 13. And then they also have more stuff up here. They have this miniature golf course, and this is pretty cool as well. No one is up here this afternoon playing golf, but this looks like a nice little golf course. And then it looks like further back they have a rock climbing wall and a basketball court. I know I came up here to see the swimming pool, but always get distracted walking around this ship. There's always something new. That's what I'm finding out. Like whenever I walk around, I'm always finding out something new. And then here is the swimming area, and it's not so much that this is a swimming pool, this is a surf simulation pool, and it's called the Flow Rider. And you can just grab one of those little surfboards like that guy has there, and this recreates the surfing experience. Pretty neat setup that they have up here. And now walking back down to deck 12. And I have not tried out that Flow Rider yet. That does look pretty neat. And back on deck 12 there's the ping pong tables, and then they have a seating area, and directly ahead is the Johnny Rocket restaurant. And they did a pretty good job with this restaurant, just recreating the 60s theme. They have these red and white booths, and then inside is the restaurant area. And it says hours of operation 2 p.m. to 11. And then here's their menu: burgers, sandwiches, beverages, and milkshakes. And if I continue to walk down this way, I'll just be back at the jogging track where we started. So let's go inside, and this should be the arcade area. And here's the arcade. Surprisingly, it is very empty. I have not seen too many children on this cruise, or at least not as many children as I've seen on other cruises. And not to sound mean, but I think that's a good thing, just because kids can get bored on a cruise ship. Though they do have fun games for children, such as the arcade, I just don't think young kids would do well on most cruises. And anyhow, here is this large atrium area, and this atrium goes all the way down. We are still on the 12th floor, and that goes all the way down to the 2nd or 3rd floor, I believe. And we could also get a much better view of this large atrium from the lower decks. And to go to the next floor, you either have the choice of taking the stairs, or you could also take the elevators. And though what I found is that when we're in port like this, these elevators can get kind of busy at certain times, because there's a lot of people that are coming back, and most people, when they come back, they come through the boarding area on deck 1, so the elevators can get kind of busy. And each side of the ship has a bank of 4 elevators, so there's another bank of 4 on the other side, and then the front of the ship is the same way. There's 8 more, for a total of 16 elevators. And each floor also has one of these maps, and this tells us where we are at. We are on floor 12, and it says there's a jogging track with a sky bar and then the video arcade. And now just headed down to the deck 11, and then not only are the stairs good exercise, but you could also view the various works of art that they have in the stairway. And now on deck 11, and from here you also get a better view of this atrium, and this goes all the way down there. So this is a really huge atrium that's at least 8-9 stories tall. And then they have this rather large piece of artwork here that's suspended in the air. Looks like it's tied up pretty well, but this is a really neat atrium area. And on deck 11 they have the Windjammer Marketplace, which is the buffet for the Explorer of the Seas, and they have this hand washing station, and everyone is singing here. Hello. And this is the buffet. That was a really neat introduction we had with the crew singing. And let's see, it's dinner time. It's 5:30. And they have a lot of desserts and fruits. There's the beverage station. And now walking towards the back or stern of the ship, and they have more food back here. And what's for dinner tonight? They have some steaks and grilled tilapia, mashed potatoes, more desserts. Definitely no shortage of food tonight. And here's French fries, hamburgers. And we're now back at the entrance to the buffet and the hand washing stations. And these are actually a really good idea, because if everyone washes their hands, then the germs won't spread as much or as fast as they can, and not as many people will become sick, or hopefully not. And anyhow, there is a second restaurant on deck 11, and this is the Chops Grill. And I have not been to this restaurant yet because my meal plan probably does not include it, but they do have their menu out, and there's a lot of seafoods and steaks. Looks pretty good. And then if we head out here, this will take us to the pool area, which we viewed part of from the jogging track up above on deck 12, but we could just go out here anyway. And they have a lot of lounge chairs set up, and then there are the 4 spas with the 2 swimming pools. Pretty nice area just to grab one of these lounge chairs and sit out on the deck and enjoy a nice afternoon day. And then on this side of the pool area, they have Arctic Zone soft serve ice cream station. And what's nice about that is they have a full-time person there to help serve your ice cream, so you don't have to worry about people being messy and sticky handles or germs being spread. They have a professional there to help everyone with their ice cream. And anyhow, we are now on deck number 10, And these are where the staterooms begin. There's these decks will all be kind of similar looking, but they have these art exhibits. This one is a Western art perhaps, and then so they have a totem pole over here and some Indian artwork. But for the most part, from deck 10 to deck 6, these are all staterooms in here, and these floors will look pretty similar. And then each floor has a seating area, though there's usually only 2 or 3 chairs, so they do fill up pretty quickly. If you want to just go out of your room and just grab a seat and enjoy the view of the atrium, you can do that. It looks like they had a little bit of a spill over here. Hopefully that'll get dried pretty quickly. And now going down to deck number 9, and some more stairway artwork. This looks like a tile mosaic. And here is deck 9, and they do have one office here. This is the Cruise Concierge Lounge. And what they do is if you need any extras, like such as tours, once the ship makes a port stop, they can help you with the extras like that. And excuse me. And then these floors are pretty much the same, like I said before, but they have these different art exhibits, and this one here has just various, maybe African art perhaps. And now going down to deck number 8. And I'll have to consult the map to see if I'm missing anything, because sometimes they will have other stuff going on, and I think this one does. There is a computer lounge, which is right here. And I actually have not used this, and I should say that the internet access here is a little bit expensive. It's about $30 per day, which for the whole cruise would be roughly, it's actually a little bit more than 30, it's like maybe like 33, 34. I think they want it like about $375 for the whole cruise. And some more artwork. So what I've been doing is just every time we make a port stop, like right now we're at the Gran Canary Island, I just use my smartphone and save a little bit of money on the Wi-Fi, or it's more than a little bit, because $33, $34 a day does add up quite a bit. And now on deck 7, and this is the card room and reading lounge. And then they have more staterooms and cabins, and here's the various artwork that they have. This, I'm not sure what you would call that, maybe more African art perhaps. Not really good with this naming this artwork, but it's just still interesting just to look to see what it is. And we are now on deck 6, and we are getting closer to where they have more of the restaurants, and almost there. And they have a office here called the Next Cruise office, and basically this is where you would go if you would like to purchase in advance your next cruise. They can help you with that. And surprisingly, during the day they are actually pretty busy. A lot of people will pre-purchase their next cruise when they're already on a cruise. And now on deck 5, and they have a lot of dining options, and here's a different kind of map that they have. So this tells us where we're at here, and they have the guest services and also the promenade shops. So here is the main dining room, I should say. It's quite a bit nicer than like a cafeteria, and This is a 3-story dining room. So this is fairly big, and I think most people eat here in this dining room. And trying to see if I could find a stairway just to get a better view of the large dining room. And like I said before, I have not eaten here just because everyone has a set schedule, and I just have a difficult time just staying on schedule, especially when we're in port. But this is the full view of the dining room. And now back at the main entrance to the dining room, and there is also more stuff on the 5th floor. We just are getting started here. There is a guest services and then the promenade shops. And here is the atrium where we started up there on deck 12 and now on the 5th deck. So that's 7 stories to this point, and then it looks like it continues down at least another 2 or 3 stories. And this looks like a bar lounge area, and then across the way is the guest services. So if you have any questions about your room, you would just go there to wait in line and get help. And here is the Royal Promenade, and this is where they have all their shops, and they also have a couple of restaurants here as well. And I found that most of these shops are kind of higher end. They do have some basic gift shops, but for the most part it is higher end luxury brands. And this store is called the Fashion District, and I really haven't done too much shopping here. And then across the aisle, that store is the shop. It's just called The Shop. And then they have this bar restaurant called Crown and Kettle. And a very nice guitar playing session. And then they have a cafe promenade, and I have not eaten here because I'm still not sure if my meal plan includes this or not. And for the most part, from what I can tell, it's mostly just pizzas and hamburgers that they serve here, though they are open, I believe, 24 hours a day. So I guess it's more for convenience, but they're not really known for gourmet foods or whatnot. And anyhow, continuing on, this is the Star Lounge.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
And they sometimes have live bands performing here inside of the Star Lounge. Though since we're at port, it looks like it is just open, and you can just grab a seat here. And also, if you have a drink package, you can certainly help yourself to the bar. And then one of my favorite decks is just right below deck number 4. And what I like about the 4th floor is the jogging track, or it's more like a path. It goes around the entire length of the ship. And the one on the 12th floor is just kind of maybe 3/4 around the entire ship. And then they also have the front bow area open, and you can kind of experience like a Titanic moment where you could just stand at the very, very front of the ship. And just going to go there first before checking out any of the other restaurants that they have on the 4th floor. I think there's a couple more bars on the 4th floor, and then maybe 1 or 2 other restaurants. And certainly getting my daily exercise going up and down these stairs. So we went from the 4th floor to what looks to be the 5th, and here, instead of lifeboats, they have these capsules, and these are either inflatable rafts, or they might just kind of unfold on their own. Hopefully the crew know how to use all this stuff and this little winch as well. Anyhow, continuing on all the way forward to the very front and bow of the ship. And something else to keep in mind, that if you come out here at night, this very front area is completely dark, and it's kind of surprising that they would do that, because it's a little bit dangerous if you don't see, for example, where the stairs are. And they might do that just because they probably don't want the lights reflecting on their control center, which is one of those areas up above. I see some people walking around with white shirts on, so that's probably one of the control centers for the Explorer of the Seas. But just something to keep in mind is that at night, this whole front area is just completely dark, and really not a good idea to trip and fall over anything, because they're really, once you're past this guardrail, there's really not a whole lot. But anyhow, this is the very bow of the ship, and once you're over this rail, that is it. There is nothing else there. And this is what the bow of the ship looks like at night. There are really no lights out here, and I'm not even sure how much my camera can pick up, but it is just pitch black. And then off to the right, passing probably part of the Canary Islands, there are some lights over there. And then now looking towards the control tower on the Explorer of the Seas, a little bit of light that direction, but if you turn the camera towards the front, it is just pitch black out here. And what's surprising is most of the other cruise ships that I've been on, they usually have this front area closed off. And I'm not really sure why they would do that, because this is probably one of the best viewing areas on the ship. You're at the very front, and you could just see the whole ship going up and down in the waves. And it's just a nice place to be when we're out at sea and they're going somewhat fast, at least for cruising speed, and you can just feel the wind in your face, and it feels like you're just out in the open ocean. And anyhow, now walking back to deck 4, and what I was saying before about this being more of like a path, so it's really not intended for people to jog on, but you certainly could if you don't mind going up and down the stairs that separate the very front bow from the rear section of the ship. And here is that stairwell right here that takes us down to deck 4. But for exercise purposes, I think you're better off on this deck as opposed to the jogging trail. That's just my preference, but certainly everyone kind of exercises differently. And you also have a pretty good view from here. Even though we are on lower level, you have a pretty good view of the water, the ocean. And when we're out at sea, you can see the waves crashing up against the ship. And one other reason you should be familiar with deck 4 if you do sail on the Explorer of the Seas is because this is where they have all of their lifeboats. And as you can see, they are suspended in the air, and hopefully everything is tied up well. And they have all of these pulleys and hydraulics, and hopefully all the crew members know how to use all of this stuff if necessary. But it's always good to know where everything is at. And so besides just for exercise purposes, it's just good to know where the lifeboats are. And now going back into the main cabin area, still on deck 4. And here is one of the entrances to the main dining room. This is the downstairs level, and then they have a few more things on deck 4. There's a bar lounge called the Tavern across the way, and this is the art exhibit that they have. So if you're into artwork, you even have opportunities to purchase some of this art. And I also believe that they have art auctions aboard the ship as well. And I'm now just entering the Casino Royale, and this is actually a fairly large casino, and they have even some of this artwork here is pretty cool. This is on the floor that I'm looking at, and they have all these coins and treasures, and there's a roulette wheel in the center. Anyhow, they have a lot of table games, blackjack, roulette, poker, and they also have a lot of slot machines. I would say they have at least 75, maybe 100 slot machines here. And for an older cruise ship, this is a fairly large casino, and surprisingly it does get pretty busy. And then this would be my favorite game. I haven't tried this yet. This is called the Cash Crane, and it looks like every time you play you get a chance to pick up one of these bundles of cash. And though each bundle is apparently showing just $1 bills, that could still be maybe $30–40 in each bundle. So that could potentially be a fun game to play. And then further towards the bow of the ship, they have another bar and lounge, and this one is called the Schooner's Bar. And then across from Schooner's, they have Giovanni's Table, which is a Italian restaurant, and I'm pretty sure that that is not included in my meal plan. And besides, the buffet has had plenty of pastas and lasagnas as well. And they also have a theater back here as well. Let me check the map. So this does say theater, but it looks like might have to go down to the 3rd floor, which is right below. And then I also think that they have a ice skating rink here, though I have not seen it myself, but just about every time I walk around, it seems like I always find something new here on this ship. And this would be the theater entrance, and it looks like it is closed. And that's a very nice stairway. And I need to find another map to see what else. So deck 2 has some staterooms, and then deck 1 is the boarding area, and then there's also a hospital on deck number 1. And it looks like they certainly don't need to visit the hospital. And then right below us on deck 2, there's a conference center. We go check out deck number 2. There might be a little bit more on the 2nd floor. And this is the conference center, and then they have more staterooms on each side of the 2nd deck. And it doesn't look like they have the art exhibits down here. I'm not sure why they left out the artwork, but they do have it in the stairway. And it is now day 7 of our cruise, and we are out on the open seas, and there is not another soul in sight as we sail west towards our next port, which is Florida. And the waves have picked up quite a bit since we left the Canary Islands, and It's rather breezy out here too, you can probably notice that. And then it is quite the experience just being at the very front of the ship and just hoping that everything is holding up in case you lean too far over. And this is the view of the front portion of the Explorer of the Seas. Not too many people out this afternoon. It could be everyone is getting ready for dinner. It's about 4:45. One of the live bands poolside on the Explorer of the Seas. And good morning everyone. Our 13-day cruise from Rome to Miami, Florida has concluded. We arrived here at the Port of Miami rather early this morning at about 3 a.m. and everyone was asked to be checked out of their cabins by 8 o'clock this morning. So there's no sleeping in on the last day of the cruise. And the reason why they do that is because this ship is going to be beginning its next cruise to the Caribbean, I believe, this afternoon, and it leaves about 4 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So they have a rather quick turnaround. And anyhow, the crew is also busy transferring everyone's luggage from the Explorer of the Seas to the cruise port terminal, which is this building here right next to where we are docked at. So the crew they have a lot of stuff to be doing, and we are also docked in a rather busy port area. There's a rather large container port just right here, and we are just right next to the downtown Miami area. And anyhow, that will conclude our 13-day cruise, and thank you for watching.